Hey everyone, this is me, the Undead Viking, and this is Rune's Deathbinder. Rune's Deathbinder is a game that is played either with two people cooperatively or played as a solo game. I played the game mostly solo, but I did play the game cooperatively with my daughter a few times, and we had a lot of fun with it. The game is about trying to kind of escape a dungeon or see how far you can get into the dungeon before you die. This is kind of like a deck builder, but really it's a deck thinner. You start with a large deck of cards that are used for their combat abilities. This game is a lot about combat, a lot about fighting the monsters in the dungeon. As the game progresses, you are forced to discard those cards, and the deck becomes thinner and thinner and thinner. And you hopefully are able to do certain actions, like spend experience points to do things that will allow you to keep some of those cards or bring some of those cards back into your deck, because one of the ways you can lose the game is by running out of cards. When you run out of cards, you can't draw anymore, and you can't go any further in the dungeon and the monsters eat you. So the game is a little bit of an abstract, but I kind of liked that because it allowed like the narrative in my mind to actually kind of take over, and I kind of could just imagine what was going on in that dungeon as I crept further and further in. So let me show you, and the game can be played just like set it up and go, like hey, we can just like dive in the dungeon and see how far we can get. Or the game does have a campaign process to it, which tells a story as you go on and on and on into the game. And you can kind of delve into the background of your nameless character and why you're in the dungeon in the first place. But let me show you how the game is played, and then we'll come back here and I'll give you my final thoughts on Deathbinder, or Rune's Deathbinder. I'm going to walk you through how Rune's Deathbinder is played. Now, as I said, there are like two different ways you can play. You can just play to like see how far you can go and just run the gauntlet and just keep going back into the dungeon over and over again and see how long you can last. Or you can play a campaign version. Now, ostensibly, the rules are exactly the same, just the campaign will follow like a storyline and has some narrative. But I'm just going to show you the basic mechanisms and just keep both those play styles in mind as I go. All right, so first thing I'm going to talk about is the player board. Now, I've already gone ahead and set that up so I can begin playing. And I've got another player board right here that I'm going to use to show you how the game is played. But just so you know, like these yellow markers here are used to track the different stats that you will have. At the beginning of the game, you start with a maximum of 6 health, and that's there. You have a 1 defense, and that's there. This track right here is called like your taint. It's like the evil that you are like possessing, and the more of that you have, the more monsters will want to attack you when you have encounters. You also have an experience track that will go up as you gain experience from satisfying either taking out bosses and monsters, or getting through obstacles or decisions that you make as the game is played. A couple other quick things. You'll notice that there are a lot of decks of cards. This is your boss deck. When you reach the end of the dungeon level, you will face a boss. Here is an enemy deck. The enemies come in level 1, level 2, and level 3. You have to get through all the level 1s to get to level 2. You got to get through all the level 2s to get to level 3, and so on and so forth. You have these cards here. Remember, this is it's like a deck thinning game, I guess would be a good way to put it. These cards here are called blindness cards. Like a lot of deck building or deck games, you will have cards that are exactly the same but these have no bonus at all to the actions that you want to take. You're considered to be blinded. It is basically things that monsters will force you to add those cards to your deck. And then obviously that'll be a negative for you. These are special action cards. I'll talk about these a little bit further as we get in. Basically, these actions are way better than the normal action cards in your deck, so you want to get these as much as possible. You get those for completing tasks, mostly by killing bosses. Skill cards are one-shot skill cards. As you gain experience, I'll show this when I show you the thing, but certain levels of experience allow you to take a skill card. Skill cards just give you a way to break the rules in one way or the other. Finally, we have events. Events are going to be told to you to be drawn for where you are in the dungeon. I'll talk about the dungeon here in just a little bit. Events are almost always going to be drawn as you travel through, and events come in lots of different aspects. So, like, could just be like an ambush. It could be a decision that you have to make. It could be an obstacle, and so on and so forth. You have a couple other things here. These are like fate chips. You can see that on one side they have like this little check mark, and then the other side, as soon as that focuses in for you, you can see it has that X, and over here it has a check. A lot of times for monsters and also just for certain things, you'll be told to check like a fate check, and then depending upon which side comes up, you will react, or the situation will occur, like whatever, like the card, or maybe the boss will attack in a certain way, things like that, and we'll talk about that more. I just wanted to, again, I was going to show you this a little bit sooner. So like these, after you have moved to a spot, you'll do rests. Rests allow you to heal wounds, increase immunities, buy action cards, and remove cards. Those cost experience points. To heal wounds, it actually costs you cards off of your deck. So you're actually, and that's one of the ways you lose, is if you run out of cards to draw, you will, unfortunately, you are done. And you can also just run out of health points as well, and if you die, that you lose as well. Increase immunities. So sometimes you will have certain things that will force you to add these little markers here that will say like that you have a vulnerability to melee damage. So any damage you take is doubled, or maybe in really bad situations it could be even tripled. You can spend experience points, or I'm sorry, you can spend cards to decrease those if you wish. It's just another way the game will work against you in a way to try to thin out your deck and cause you to lose. There's a couple places up here for side quests. You can have 2 side quests at a time. I'll show those to you in just a little bit. They're another way for you to earn rewards as the game is played. Down here in the bottom, you have the 4 spots that allow you to like have it. So you have a draw deck, which is already, you see down there. Stored cards, you will have a stored card stat, which is here. You start with 1. You'll be able to store cards after your turn into the stored action spot. That is a really good skill to have, because when your deck runs out, you get to take your stored cards and shuffle them up again, and then like that's your new deck. So that's a really good thing to have. You can also, as you can see here, buy action cards. For 1 experience point, you can shuffle your removed action cards, because the removed are ones you use or that you discard, and then draw 3 and then save 1. So you can build up your deck back up using that as well. And you can see there's spots here for your own skill cards. Here, I'll get that focused in. Your own skill cards there, and then your cards that are removed are placed there. All right, so the game is played pretty simply. It's just going to be like decisions you have to make, and I'll kind of show you certain things. You'll start at the top of the dungeon, and you'll move down to the bottom. Now, you might be saying, well, I just want to go straight down to the bottom. But each one of these little spots here, this might be a little tough to see, so I'll get this to focus in. You'll start, and then on this token, they'll have they can have 1 or up to 4 of these little markers on there. And this one has 3. So you can see it has an event, it has a rest, and then it has the encounter on that particular disc. And so if you get through this disc and you survive it, you will turn it on the other side, and then this will be like your like a side quest if you choose to take it. And if you defeat a level 2 enemy, you will get 2 cards. So it's just like those are what you have to do. So you'll pick a spot to start on the top, and you'll work your way down. And as the game progresses, you will kind of figure out exactly like pushing your luck or what you want to try or attempt to do as you go. So depending upon where you go, so I'm just going to here. Let's get one. We'll just go through I'll just grab one here. like one of these with the 4 spots on there, so you can kind of see. So, and it isn't always going to be, you know, like you'd think the game will be, okay, an event, then an encounter, and now you rest. You know, I like how it does kind of split things up a little bit. And here, like, you have this one, it's like encounter, and then a rest, and then an event, and then an encounter. So encounters are pretty easy. They're pretty standard. These will be the combats that you'll have with the monsters from the enemy deck. When you have an encounter, you will look and see how high up you are on the taint level. Depending upon where you are, it'll tell you to draw a certain number of enemies. So if you're at the very beginning, you're going to have 1 enemy, and as you climb up higher and higher, you're going to have more and more that you will draw and put in front of you. Alright, so if I only have 1 enemy to fight, I will take this card and I will turn it over. As you can see, this is a Corrupted Spider. Up here it is a melee, and when it attacks it'll do 1 damage, and it's going to be worth 2 experience if I defeat it. Alright, so looking down here, you can see that it has no vulnerabilities. When I attack it with melee, you'll multiply it by 1. When I attack it with magic, you multiply it by 1. It has 7 health, and it has a special ability that when it is defeated, it explodes, and it deals 1 damage to all characters. So when combat begins, you will draw 6 cards off the top of your action deck. 1, 2, 3, 4. So in this case, I got a lot of magic, and I only got 1 melee card. But that doesn't matter. You know, and in some cases, like the melee cards might not even be that good, or they might not be suitable for the situation you're in. Like this one has 0, 1, and 2, and it says like it does no damage if I have level 1 melee, and at this present time I only have level 1 melee, so I won't do any damage. But what's the special ability? It says that in the bottom, cleanse, you can decrease one of your vulnerabilities by 1 with a minimum of 1 when you use this. So it might be something you want to save for later on. I'll show you how that saving works. Now some cards, they'll just have the damage on them, like so, like 1, 2, 3, like that. And they don't have any special ability on there whatsoever. You can, and some of them like will have you use different abilities. Like here, this is a 1, 2, 3. It says increase focus. Spend 3 defense to increase the damage of any focus cards played in round 1. So I mean, but I don't have 3 defense. I only have 1. But you can see how these things happen. So in this case, I have 3 attacks that I can use. If I have any skill cards that I could possibly use, those don't count against me. So I could use skill cards in the combat, but they don't count against the 3 that I use. So if I just did like 3 points, did 3 damage cards, like these 3 right here, they would do 1, 1, and 1. I'd play those 3, and I would apply that damage to this spider, and then the spider would attack me with its 1 melee. I have 1 defense, that's what I start with, so I would decrease that down to 0, and at the end of the combat, my defense will go back to its starting spot, but now any more damage that I take will unfortunately take away from my health. So, of the 3 cards that I have left, I have the hold card of, so these 3 get discarded. I should put those right here, and they are discarded. Of these 3 that I left, I'm allowed to store 1 of them, because that's my store ability, so I want to store this cleanse card. I'll put that over there. And now the other 2 go over like so. So another round of combat starts, I would draw another 6 cards, and I would most likely probably kill the Corrupted Spider on my next round. As soon as the Corrupted Spider is dead, you take it, you put it in a discard pile. It doesn't get folded back into the enemy deck in any way, shape, or form. Sometimes monsters will have things that will ask you to flip those tokens for different attacks or different actions that they might do. But you know, that's just well, there's lots of different types of monsters and lots of different types of things that can happen. So you can kind of tell that you want to have combat done as quickly as possible, because the longer combat lasts, you are going to have more and more cards end up over here on the removed action cards. If you have more than 1 enemy, all the enemies do attack you, but you get to pick which enemies that you attack and decide to fight. So sometimes you want to focus all of your damage on 1 just so you can take it out so it can't do any damage to you. As I said, after the combat's over, you put your defense back to where it was, and you're going to begin again. So, I mean, that's encounters. Encounters are pretty understandable. I mean, I'll just show you a boss card just so you can kind of see, these things are a little more difficult. You can see like a boss. This boss has like 16 health. It has attacks of 2. It's worth 4 experience, and then like you can see here, players cannot attack other enemies until at least 1 damage is dealt to this enemy. So like you have to, as you can see, you have to do damage to that one. So you can kind of tell that's. And oh, I should mention that like let me find the other card here. One moment. So yeah, there we go. So like you can see how these 2 cards kind of go together. I kind of like that. Like it actually, like these 2 are like a joint boss that you'd have to fight and attack to defeat. So it's kind of neat. And you can kind of see how like this one has that you flip the coin and you see which attack that this particular boss would do by looking at the bottom there. So kind of cool stuff that goes on, and telling a story and having a cool little narrative of what's going on. Helps with the immersion of the game as well. All right, so that's encounters. Events are, as I said, come in 4 different ways, and I have kind of rigged the deck just so I can show you 4 different things here. Actually, these are the 4 different events that you can possibly run into. I'll just run through each one here really quickly. Now, these aren't all going to be the same. Some of them have our decision, where it just says like here, adventurers are running from a creature. You spot a broken column about to tip over. What do you do? And it says here, push it, plus 4 XP, but plus 2 taint. Hold it, minus 1 health, minus 1 taint if you decide to do that. So it's just kind of a decision that you have to decide what's going on. So here's a magic drain at the end of the round. Lose 1 health. It's an obstacle. So you have to, like, an obstacle will just something that impedes you and does a little bit of like damage or something. Like some of the obstacles will also be like just a large boulder blocking the way or things like that, or traps or what have you. A discovery where it says make a faith test. Where here, hold on, and then you'll spin it, and it's like, so it's a corrupted book. Draw and store a special action card, or increase melee vulnerability by 1 depending upon what you roll. Or if you don't want to do it, you can just increase your taint by 1 if you want to do that. And finally, you just have another encounter. But you can see here on the bottom it says add 1. You're going to add a creature to that encounter if you went ahead and had it. So events have that wide range of things that can possibly happen. And again, adds the narrative, adds the immersion. After, as I said, like when the game tells you to rest, you can spend your experience however you like to increase your different abilities, or heal yourself, or get cards, or reduce your vulnerabilities if those have been increased. The other big thing that you should always remember is that when you do hit, as I said, you do hit like a 6 or a 14 and so on and so forth, and 22 and 30 and 37 experience, you get skill cards. And as I said, skill cards are just ways that can block, just change rules with, like here's judgment. When you make a faith toss on an event, you may choose the result. Here is like lockpick. And as soon as that comes into focus again, lockpick, immediately defeat an obstacle. Experience is awarded as a result. So, and notice how these are like, it'll say like single use skill on the bottom. And when it says single use skill, what that means is that once you used it, you will discard the skill and you can't use it again. So, but those are just ways to break the rules and as the game goes on. I just want to show you maybe a higher level monster as well. Like, as I said, like enemies go up to level 3. Like here you have these like this ravaged Finar. It does 3 melee damage, 5 experience, but look, it's got like 22 health. So the game does definitely ramp up in difficulty as you progress further and as you fight more and more, and fight deeper and deeper into the dungeon. The game's a heck of a lot of fun. I love the fact that like you're constantly like worried about how many action cards are you going to discard, how many action cards are you going to go through, are you going to be able to survive to get to another level. That aspect of the game is very, very fun to me, and I've been playing a lot of solo games lately, and this game is perfect as a solo game. You can play it cooperatively, and I'll talk a little bit about that in my final thoughts. But as far as like a solo game, this game is amazing. But let me talk about that and more in my final thoughts. Alright, so that is how Ruins Deathbinder is played. As I said, the game is played ostensibly the same way regardless. Now, when you play cooperatively, you just kind of, you're going to be like sharing the deck and sharing what is going on in the game. You have to like make mutual choices, and you can kind of branch off and go and do your own thing. But for the most part, you are going to be like trying to make sure that you're making good choices, because you're sharing the deck and you're sharing what's going on, and you're sharing the dungeon as well. So it is kind of fun to like just watch the player do their turn, especially if they're making mistakes and you're like, what are you doing? But I mean, ultimately it is a very satisfying and exciting time when two players can come together and defeat the game. Which, you know, I said the same for any cooperative game, but I mean, for the most part, the game just plays exactly the same. It's just, when I played with my daughter, we made sure that we just, like, had conversations about, like, oh, you know, it's like, what do you think, that happened, or why is your character in the dungeon, or what do you think that monster like looks like or is doing, or like, you know, and we come up with stories and stuff like that. And you know, since she's you know, dungeon mastering her own D&D group now, she's really into this fantasy dungeon experience, and so that game really came alive for both of us when we played it. But that's neither here nor there. It's just that's what our experience was when we played the game together. Now, as I've said in other videos, I have really gotten into playing games solo lately, just because I've been at home by myself a lot lately, and but I really enjoyed like games that I can play and challenge myself, in a turn off the computer, you know, experience. Playing a solo game, being a Luddite, and just, you know, playing very analog, and I've enjoyed that a great deal. But it seems to me like a lot of times with solo games, either they have a lot of setup, or they just have like this, you can't get through a session, right? Like, you have to make sure that you have that table that the game is set up on and nobody touches it, or you have to take a picture of it so you can put it all back to where it was. And especially if the game's got a lot of setup, you don't want to bother with that. And you know, the thing is that here's a solo game that like you can set it up in like 5 minutes. I mean, literally, it's like slap those tokens on the map, shuffle up the action deck. Shuffle up each of the decks, obviously shuffle the monsters, but once all that's done, set up all the decks, you're good to go and you're ready to roll. And the game itself, you know, doesn't stay long, basically because the game's pretty brutal and takes you out pretty quickly. And so, like, as you're fighting through the dungeon and you're like, you know, because remember, there's a little bit of randomness as far as like the card draws and the flipping of the fate coins. But for the most part, it's very deterministic and it's very tactical, and it rewards like good strategy and good choices, which is something that I appreciate. I play too many games where it's like, oh, I made a really good choice, but the game just kind of bones me anyway, and you're kind of like, well, you know, I could have just like, you know, thrown a dart and I would have had the same result. But when you're actually making good resource management and making good choices as the game progresses, and the game rewards that, then it feels like you're actually accomplishing something, and Ruins Deathbinder actually does that. So if you are a solo game player, or if you're a fan of co-ops and you just have that one person that you play a lot of co-ops with, I would strongly suggest that you check out Ruins Deathbinder. It is a heck of a lot of fun. It has a lot of story behind it, and it definitely, you know, has like a wonderful gritty feel as well, which, you know, I'm really into the gritty dungeon feel, not the big colorful dungeon with like, you know, lots of different like beautiful like cityscapes and things like that in my fantasy world. I want like gritty, kind of worldly, you know, like getting down and dirty type of thing. And here we are. This game totally embodies that very much. So there you go. If you have any questions about the game, by all means, ask away. I'll be happy to answer those as best as I can. As always, thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. I really do appreciate that. And remember, be the best version of you possibly can be each and every day. I guarantee you, the more love that you give the universe, the more the universe is going to love you back. I'm the Undead Viking. You're awesome. I'll see you next time.